Okay, as the title suggests, what we're here to do today is talk about these Chinese-made SME adapters. These were all sourced via AliExpress. They're also available on eBay, although the eBay ones seem to be more expensive, even though they are coming from the same source. Now, when I first started using the Origin Live tone arm, I had a basic SME to 24mm converter. Now this actually costs more than any of these Chinese provided or Chinese supplied adapters. When you buy them, you specify the diameter of the hole or the mount you want, the arm pillar collet, and what you get is the mount in its plastic bag. And a small bag with 4 bolts and 2 Allen keys. Now, the mounts themselves are all, so far, have been really quite good quality, and what you actually get when you buy one comes in 3 parts: the bed plate, the slide, and the arm collet, or the arm tube collet. Now, one thing that has been quite obvious is that they're all slightly different. For instance, some of them have 2 locking bolts or 2 locking grub screws on the arm tube collet at 120 degrees apart from each other, and some only have 1. The other thing you get is occasionally they have also a recess, sometimes threaded, sometimes not, in the side of the slide, and this is so that when you use the locking grub screw on this side, it will actually lock it into the centre of the sliding base. I say some have that, some don't. This most recent one I bought didn't. It has the locking grub screw in the side, but there is no recess for it to lock into, similarly with this black one, and this one only has 1 grub screw on the outer edge of the arm collet. Now, they're all quite nicely made. I found I have had no issues with any of them at all. The only thing I would say is that when I initially bought a 23mm one for the Origin Live, I wondered if you could just buy the collets and then just swap them over, but they are in fact completely different sizes, as you can see, or perhaps you can't, I don't know. So they're not at all interchangeable, and even some of the slides won't fit in with the collet in place because they are too big for the cutout in the sliding base. The only thing they don't give on the measurements is the actual total height of the unit, and measuring the 4 that I have here, they are ranging between 17.5 and 18.5 millimeters tall. I also bought one of these, which is an open frame one, and the slide is locked and loosened by using these 2 bolts. Again, reasonably well made, certainly quite good value for money, but if you're using something like the Gelco tone arm, then these bolts are covered up by the underside of the tone arm when it's low down, and even when it's higher or raised up above the arm plate, it's very difficult to get an Allen key in here to slide the plate backwards and forwards. So you may need to think about that. My personal preference is for this type. I think they're nicely constructed and certainly work quite well. Unfortunately, as I say, there's no way of telling before you order them whether you've got a 2 grub locking screws on the arm tube collet or just a single one. I've essentially bought one for every tone arm I've got. I'm currently using one on my 12-inch Gelco, and I'm more than happy with it. It locks up nice and tightly, and it is very easy to adjust. So as I say, I'm well pleased, and unless I buy a different size tone arm, I won't need to buy any more. These are one for each tone arm I currently own. So I'll be sticking with these now. The reason I purchased them was because I wanted to put a second Gelco 12-inch tone arm on my turntable. I approached the local distributor, or the UK distributor for acoustic signature turntables, and I also spoke to Acoustic Signature Direct, and the cost of buying a 12-inch arm mount would be between £700 and £800, which, although is not unreasonable given the fact that they are CNC engineered, and they are anodized, and they're extremely well made. I don't really want to invest another £700 in just mounting another arm on my turntable. And another thing that came up was that although I've had the turntable for probably 16, 17 years, maybe even longer, with it, and it was originally supplied with a 12-inch arm board or a 12-inch arm mount, the people at Acoustic Signature tell me that it was never designed for a 12-inch arm, and they would have to produce one that I got already. And the one I have at the moment is not actually that nice to use. It's very restricted on cable routing. So that's why in the end I decided to go for these SME mounts, SME Convertor mounts, and make my own freestanding pods, which I'm currently using for the Gelco. Picture will appear of it in use now, I should imagine. I've also, as you can tell from that picture, quite dramatically changed the actual way I'm making the standalone arm mounts, and that's what we'll be going on to talk about next. So the SME arm mounts have been put away, and now I'm going to go through talking about the changes I've made to the freestanding pods that I use, or I'm going to use for all my arms, with the exception of the current 12-inch one that's already attached to the turntable. Now this is the standard supplied type of mount you get with the Acoustic Signature. Very heavy, very well made, and beautifully finished. I'd say this one's quite a few years old now, so has suffered the constant bolting on and unbolting. The restrictions of this is that it bolts on underneath the platter using this mounting slot here, and it then rotates around that bolt, and you are reasonably restricted where you can put the tone arm, whereas with a freestanding pod these can go anywhere on the periphery because they're not attached, as this one is, to the turntable itself. So this is the original SME mount, which I used with that flat plate adapter I previously mentioned, and have bought the SME Convertor mounts to use with this. But I have now also bought some pre-cut Perspex mounts like this. This is a 5mm one, these are a 10mm, and these are available on eBay. £13 delivered, £12.99 including postage, or £12.98, and they are cut with the 4 holes here and here for the SME mount, and 2 outer mounting bolts. However, I obviously need them drilled and tapped for the 3 mounting pillars that I use, or that I've based everything on from the original acoustic signature mounts. Now, with my previous arm pod video, I described how I got a 6-inch blank of aluminium, 6 inches in diameter, and this is, mixing my measurements here, 6mm thick. And using a downloadable paper protractor, I could cut this out, double-sided tape it onto the base, and that would allow me to drill the holes, 6mm holes here, or 5mm holes, then tapped for a 6mm grub screw with a pointed end, that I could then use the lock nuts, so it could be adjusted, height adjusted from the top with an Allen key, and then locked in place by the thumb wheel. Now, previously, the pod that I made for the Riga arm, I bought a rod which I tapped 6mm threads into, so I could then bolt from the bottom and from the top to hold it in place. The difference with this is that I use a 4mm long threaded bolt, and as you can see, or I don't know if you can see, let's get this close up, use various spacers to provide the height needed. Now the spacers, I bought a little bag of 20, 10, 8, 6, 4, 3 and 2mm spacers, which I could then use to set the height of the pillars, whereas on the previous pod I had to cut them quite precisely to the right height. The only issue here is it's quite fiddly sliding them on, locking it in place and then moving on to the next one, but it certainly allows me, as you can see, to have different height adjustable pods. All I need to do is have a different size bolt, different length of bolt, to enable me to alter the height of the mount that I'm going to be using. Now these are, compared with the acoustic signature one, which, as I say, is bolted to the turntable itself, these are, although because they have a fairly large base, 6-inch diameter, with the spikes which I then sit into the pucks, which have non-slip feet and a recess to take the spike. They tend not to move anywhere, but to give added mass, what I do is I have jars or tins, quite nice looking brushed aluminium tins, which sit in underneath, and these are filled with lead shot, and these are about 750 grams each, so that becomes far more substantial in weight and doesn't really want to move at all. Now the only thing here is that rather than buy different heights of tin, screw top, and you can see the lead balls in there. Rather than try and source different size tins to allow me to get underneath the top plate, when it's very much lower like this one, what I end up using is a billet of lead. Again, fairly cheap and readily available on eBay. I think I paid £7 for nearly 2 kilos, and these just sit on the base around the periphery, and again add substantially to the mass of the mount. So that's it really. The cost of these, I haven't worked it out to the pound, but we're talking about £10 for the 6-inch alloy, £13 for the perspex top. The spacers, well, I mean, if you buy a 10, then that's 3 lots of 3. And I have bought fairly different sizes, but they're usually under £5 for a pack of 10. Again, I've only found the similar size to the original mounting that Acoustic Signature used, 14mm, available from a Chinese manufacturer. So I've bought quite a few of those. But there's certainly less than £50 with all the bits in here, bolts, the spikes, which, I mean, I think I bought a pack of 10 for £4. The knurled finger locks, again, under £5 for 10. So a substantial saving over an Acoustic Signature provided one. Even these small ones are around about £300 if I remember correctly. Been a long time since I bought one of those, but certainly quite expensive. And although it would be nice to have Acoustic Signature's superbly finished items, I'm more interested in getting the arm mounted economically and spending more on cartridges or phono stages than I am just a lump of metal to mount the tone arm on. So that's about it really. Any questions about those, the way these are made, or anything you need to ask, just pop a message on the comment section. And I think that's about it. Goodbye.